Say you didn't like beans, or you just can't eat them, and a video recipe for bean soup came up in your social media feed of choice. What would you do? Do you A, keep on scrolling, or B, comment saying that you can't eat beans and ask what to replace the beans with instead? A, right? Unfortunately for TikTok creator Vibing Granola Mom, and creator of a high iron bean soup recipe, a number of those in her audience opted for the latter. Another TikTok creator, Princess Milky, observed this play out and uploaded an exasperated TikTok, expressing her frustration and bewilderment with these audience members. In the following weeks, other TikTok creators also spoke on this topic, expressing a similar sentiment towards the comments. You may have even seen this phenomenon in less extreme forms, such as commenters asking questions that have answers they might be able to find easily with a quick Google.
Another time I was watching a TikTok about Beyonce and someone in the comments said, "When's her birthday? Google it! Google it, Google it, Google it."
For many, this bean soup incident typified a broader online phenomenon of what many consider to be a sense of entitlement, self-centeredness, or whataboutemeism. And the phenomenon has only gotten worse since then, with similar behaviour from commenters and internet users more broadly, still expressing these same unreasonable expectations of creators. But why is this actually happening? And what does it say about our relationships with creators? Let's get into it. The bean soup effect, as I'll call it, can be broken down into three parts. First, the creator posts something online, such as a recipe. Second, a user, for whom the content isn't really relevant, sees it. Third, the user comments, expecting the content to be made relevant to them. The key issue with this phenomenon is the unreasonable expectation of relevance. The user can't accept that content just isn't relevant to them, even in a sea of content where alternatives are a few taps away. As Sarah the Book Fairy says,
"Instead of just saying, hey, if I don't like beans, maybe I shouldn't watch this bean soup video."
Sarah uses the example of seeing a bread recipe if you're gluten-free. You would simply accept that it isn't applicable to you and continue scrolling. But a sizable number of people clearly aren't capable of this. Why? Is this because we're more individualistic and everything's all me these days? This is kind of Sarah the Book Fairy's theory, what she calls the what about me effect, and uses her experience of the US as an individualistic society as a reference. Sarah acknowledges this could be a broader phenomenon beyond the US, but it's worth talking about this in a specifically American context, because of the country's association with it. There's quite a few different perspectives on why America is the way it is, but many attribute it to the emphasis on liberty in the founding of the country. This does not mean that all Americans are selfish or self-centered, or that it's the only individualistic society. It's just a relevant example. Individualism has played a big role in the country's economic success, even if wealth is concentrated in the hands of the few and opportunity is far from equal. Seeking to improve one's own circumstances, especially in a country with plentiful natural resources, has driven economic growth for its relatively short history. This was central to Reagan's free market ideology, or Reaganomics, which focused on reducing regulations, reducing taxes, and reducing government spend. Theory being that this enriches society as a whole, aka trickle-down economics. GDP did grow by a third during his presidency, an over $2 trillion increase, but inequality grew and accelerated, and poverty remained largely the same by the end. This era, with similar reforms being enacted by Thatcher in the UK, is typified by the catchphrase, "greed is good," based on a Gordon Gekko quote from the 1987 film Wall Street.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
This free market philosophy, combined with America's mastery of consumerism, helped foster a cultural, the customer is always right mentality. And social media lives and dies by its ability to give us what we want. If you're old enough to remember the early days of social media, you might remember social media as being a lot more social. This isn't me complaining about social media, I promise, but early social media, such as early Facebook, was very much focused on friends, mostly real life ones. This was the case for some time, even after the introduction of pages, but their introduction did signal the start of feeds, not just about friends. Friends were still part of the mix and still are, but the pages we liked told Facebook more about ourselves and allowed it to optimize our feeds according to interests, not just friendships. Over time, the media in social media became much more pronounced, with this transition really kickstarted by Instagram, which featured pictures and video only, a fairly new concept at the time. This was enabled by the increasing universality of smartphones, which democratized media creation and made it easier to upload shaky concert footage. This glut of content meant that social media algorithms had more data to train on, gradually improving over time and increasing the time users spent on them, despite frustration among many with non-chronological timelines. Of course, this varies by the quality of the algorithm too, with TikTok being a prime example of this. The algorithm that powers its For You page has been described as the secret sauce behind its success. because of its ability to get to know exactly what makes its users tick, becoming uncannily good at predicting what videos from around the site are going to pique your interest. This helped it grow from just 55 million users in 2018 to 1 billion in September 2021, and 26% of social media users globally now use it at least once a month. Reels' algorithm has been improving too, with its daily watch time growing 25% year on year in Q4 2023. Naturally, consumerism has been a key part of this, with these hyper-tailored feeds providing optimal data for targeted advertising, which provides advertisers with a better ROI, encouraging them to spend more. TikTok took this a step further by launching TikTok Shop in 2022, connecting sellers directly with customers and taking a cut of sales, instead of just being somewhere for them to advertise on. TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, doesn't publicly release information on TikTok's profitability, but the Financial Times reported it as being unprofitable in March 2024. ByteDance's overall profit jumped 60% in 2023 though, so it's difficult to get a clear picture of how far off it is. Regardless, it's a clear revenue driver for them, as they look to expand their logistics offering and heavily push TikTok Shop in the app. It feels like every other TikTok has a shopping link. I've personally been on the receiving end of 8 in a row, and this topic has been covered extensively by other YouTubers. What makes TikTok Shop unique though, is that you'll find creators of all sizes linking products on it. You'll often find a relatively unknown creator shouting,
"Someone from the drinks company has messed up massively because monsters are going for so cheap right now."
As they shill a product that is supposedly cheap due to a pricing error, rather than, being cheaply manufactured from cheap materials. But the most effective marketing, TikTok Shop or otherwise, is from those creators that we have an established quote-unquote relationship with, ones we've followed for some time. According to Psychology Today, this works in part due to the familiarity effect and repetition bias. Consistent and frequent social media posting within an influencer's niche builds followers who are likely to become purchasers at some point. A consistent message or product use builds recognition. The familiarity effect and the repetition bias confirm that people prefer and value repeated information and familiar things over novel ones. These relationships are what's termed parasocial, and you may have them even if you think you don't. These can hardly be called relationships at all, as they're one-sided, where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. I was surprised to learn that these relationships can actually be beneficial, with a study in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health finding that the parasocial interaction between social media users and influencers in the virtual world, or on social media platforms, could be transferred to users' own psychological benefits, including perceived friendship and psychological well-being in the real world. This may be because we have fewer close friends than 20 years ago, with a survey from the Survey Center on American Life finding that the percentage of Americans with 0 close friends has jumped from 3 to 12%, and the percentage with more than 10 has fallen from 33 to 13%. The most obvious and extreme parasocial relationships are seen in stan culture, describing an obsessive and extreme interest in specific celebrities, with the phrase being based on the 2000 song Stan by Eminem, which describes letters from an unhinged and stalkerish fan of his. An article in Salon suggests that there may actually be a link between this drop in friendships and stan culture. Carla Marie Manley, a clinical psychologist, told Salon that the more people feel isolated from themselves, isolated from their community, it becomes a vicious cycle because they feel more isolated. They tend to retract, stay in their homes, and become obsessed with some things, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or fandom culture. On a rational level, assuming a sound state of mind, they may know that their relationship is only one way, and they may even have some self-awareness about their obsessive behavior. But while celebrities will leverage the passion of their fans to sell stuff to them, whether that be sponsorships or their own brands, such as James Charles' makeup or Mr. Beast burgers, it's obviously not just celebrities that have this power. The internet creating its own class of celebrities soon gave rise to the concept of the influencer, which, in simplest terms, means someone in your niche or industry with sway over your target audience. While these influencers may be famous in their niche, they might be YouTubers, IG models, TikTokers, streamers, etc., they're likely to be relatively unknown outside of it. You don't need a massive following to be considered an influencer, there's even micro-influencers. In fact, for what they lack in size, small influencers often make up for in the strength of the connection they have with their audience. Many influencers, especially on short-form video, have ordinariness and relatability as a core part of their appeal. This might be parents who show themselves making their family dinner, or clean top creators who show themselves doing resets of their messy homes, or smaller vloggers who take you with them on errand runs. The extremely low barrier to entry for making content, a smartphone and an internet connection, has meant that anyone can be a creator. Short-form video in particular has normalized rough around the edges content. If you're funny, relatable, or photogenic, then people are often happy to overlook poor production values. These consumerist, parasocial relationships I'm describing though, ones where the person our lizard brain thinks we're friends with tries to sell us stuff, are as messy and dysfunctional as they sound. Brands benefit from their association with influencers. As well as general awareness, influencers' social capital is shared with them. In exchange, the brand gives money and/or free product to the influencer. For influencers with the biggest followings, a single post can fetch millions of dollars. But While brands might benefit from exposure to an otherwise difficult to reach audience, or association with a high status individual, influencers risk tarnishing their reputations if that brand engages in unethical behaviour. Even just in the context of YouTubers, there's no shortage of examples of this. Whether that's BetterHelp selling customer data, or Scentbird's CEO being part of a cult, or established titles misleading customers into thinking they'd actually be lords and ladies, by failing to make it clear that it was a gag gift and no such title would be bestowed. Of course, the worst example of this is probably FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange that filed for bankruptcy in 2022 after massive fraud perpetuated by one of its founders, Sam Bankman-Fried, and his partner, Caroline Ellison. The damage done to the reputations of YouTubers sponsored by FTX was particularly severe due to the fact that many of these YouTubers were in the finance space, giving extra authority to their ad reads. Of course, many of these influencers went on to apologize and distance themselves from the company, even taking down the videos that featured the sponsorships. However, it's difficult to undo this kind of reputational damage, and the science even seems to suggest that this can negatively affect fans, with a 2022 article establishing that the path from users' psychological well-being to loyalty towards their favorite social media influencers and products advertised by the influencers could be weakened if the users perceive the influencers as less socially responsible. We feel a sense of betrayal in this situation, much in the same way we would if a friend scammed us, especially if it costs us dearly. While we might not hold them entirely responsible, there is a sense that the trust we place in them, or our idealized version of them, has been shattered. While we accept that marketing products is part of their job, there is an expectation that they do their due diligence. That's why, when our friend recruits us into an MLM and we end up wasting time and money, as is statistically almost inevitable, that inevitably tarnishes the relationship. But maybe the problem is that we do have these expectations of people who are ultimately strangers. Influencers make entire careers, often very lucrative ones, of their ability to effectively market products and services to us, and it's the imagined connections we feel we have with them that allow them to do this. Someone marketing a product to us who is unknown to us, such as the people who appear on our TikTok For You pages, yelling at us to buy supposedly outrageously cheap boxes of Monster, aren't very compelling. Their opinion carries no weight. But with these imagined relationships come expectations, as relationships with real life friends would. We expect them to have our back, to, not recommend crypto exchanges committing fraud. Resisting this urge can prove to be a challenge though, because our experience of these creators takes place in a context in which we're accustomed to being given everything we want. We want to believe that influencers are our friends because going on social media takes us into a world where our rich, successful, interesting friends want to tell us about their day and let us know what they've been up to. As Sarah the Book Fairy suggested in our interpretation of the Bean Soup effect, we make everything about ourselves, and while there's a historical context behind this, social media lives and dies by its ability to do the same, because the better it can do it, the more better targeted ads it can sell. So next time something entirely irrelevant to you comes up on your social media app of choice, comment on it, demanding it be made relevant to you. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think about the what about me effect? Is it a sign that we're increasingly self-centered, or is it just a source of manufactured outrage? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment down below, as well as a like and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. I release a new video every couple of weeks. Till next time, see ya!